Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and in this video we're breaking down Dune Prophecy. The end is here, and Season 1's closed out with some big things going down. We've had our eyes peering over the details, and I've got what you need to know. But firstly, just a quick word from our sponsors. As we head into the new year, it's important to look to the future. Opera 1 R2 will take your browser to the next level and streamline everything for 2025. This is the next phase in the evolution of the Opera browser, coming with new tab capabilities, built-in AI, and a player that brings together music and video. It's truly a futuristic browsing experience. With Opera 1 R2, you can also alter the entire look and theme of your browser. At your fingertips, you can select sounds, UI colors, and even animated backgrounds. Opera allows you to customize every aspect with endless customization. On top of this, you can split screen your browser without the need for two windows. With a simple dragging of the tab, you can use two tabs in the same browser window. I'm someone who looks at live video and also checks comments from the videos that I'm looking at. It's completely game changing for stuff like that, and we also have the browser's player. The player can let you control your music just by hovering over the player icon, and it connects to all the big streaming services. This includes Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, Deezer, Tidal, SoundCloud, and Amazon Music. You can also detach the player pop-out and move it beyond the browser window or even outside the browser without any extra app. Studying how people use their browsers, they've also created the tab traces. This lets you easily view your recently viewed tabs. If you have loads open and can't remember the one you've just been to, there's a subtle underscore so you can quickly see where you were. They also have a darker score for the one you've just visited as well. There's also Tab Island. This lets you group your tabs and organize and save space. It allows you to browse effortlessly. They've also introduced Aria, Opera's built-in AI. With Aria's command line, you can quickly ask queries without opening new tabs or windows. Instantly get answers without distraction. Aria also has an AI image generator that lets you create the image you want from scratch. Aria's image recognition understands and interprets the images you upload, and it gets you information and answers on any image-based questions you have. All you have to do to download it is click my link in the description. Opera is the browser that makes your computer sing, so just click my link in the description and go and download it now. Thanks. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is who was in the vision with Desmond. In the episode, we get this filled in and learn more about what's really going on. Woken by machines after the sandworm swallowed him, he was then implanted with a virus. The eyes we saw belonged to a machine and merely appeared as two because his eyes were out of focus. So it confirms that it wasn't Leto II, and instead the visions were misinterpreted by the characters and definitely not by me. From what we see though, Desmond's eye has the virus implanted there, and then he looks up to see a shadowy figure. It did give me big Dead Space vibes, where the main character had to go through eye surgery in the second game. I also love how eyes have been ever present throughout the show as well, and that iconography has been a key to the nightmares. From what we learn from it, Desmond's eye has the virus, and he then looks up to see a shadowy figure. It's such a good scene, and this hooded presence could be what was seen in the visions. In episode 4, the sisters scribbled away, and in hindsight, this was likely the figure. At the time, I know I said it was Paul, but this is more likely to be the figure here. The drawings themselves actually told Desmond's backstory, and we had them going through his life and rebirth. He was on Arrakis, which we saw with the dunes, and then the sandworm showcased the swallowing. This then went to the eyes, which are what woke the character up. Now amongst this, we also got someone in a doorway. It was only during this episode where we had the bed shot that I realized this could have just been the operating table. The dreams happened when the acolytes were asleep, and thus they were triggered when lying on a bed. So I think all these moments in the drawings are actually just filling in Desmond's transformation. Anyway, the figure is one of the dangling mysteries at the end of the season. Though it's likely a bigger character for the future, we can guess who it is by looking at the past. Personally, I believe this is Erasmus, which I'll discuss for this part of the video. Erasmus served under Omnius, who was the machine god of the AI. However, Erasmus operated independently. During an accident, Erasmus was left frozen in a cave for 20 years. The guy basically wasn't attached to update rollouts, and in the end, he detached himself from the network. In layman's terms, this allowed him to become separate from the Evermind, and it might explain how he survived the Butlerian Jihad. Being independent gave him a different perspective, and thus he began his own education. Studying philosophy and science, he also experimented on humans. This of course ties into what happened with Desmond, so it makes sense the figures behind it. Erasmus also has a streak of rebellion within him, so he'd also want to take down the Order. As Desmond mentioned, the humans simply swapped the controlling hand of one group and gave it to another. During the Jihad, Erasmus Erasmus made a bet with Omnius that he could make humans rebel. Much like our own society, we had structures of power and people amongst us who are way richer than others. He said that he felt if given the right push, that even those people would stand up to the system. Over time this happened, with the seeds of revolution being sown. So Erasmus was a key cog in killing the machines. During the Jihad, he also adopted a slave named Gilbertus Albans, who also continued his experiments. Over the Jihad, he and Albans became like father and son, with this playing into Erasmus's survival. Though the anti-AI law was put in place, he refused to deactivate his father. Hiding his brain away, Erasmus survived the machine extermination. This even came at the cost of Albans, who was executed for using AI. He entrusted his students to move Erasmus, and eventually he was given a lab-born body from Albans' DNA. Erasmus seemingly fell in love with a woman named Anna Carino, but this was all just an experiment. Eventually he divulged the truth, which completely broke her heart. Anna then took her own life, and Erasmus desperately tried to save her. However, she died, and Erasmus then destroyed himself in a sort of Romeo and Juliet thing. However, it wasn't the end. During the Jihad, copies of him and Omnius were shot into space, where they survived. We then had all the events of Dune playing out, and Leto II carrying on the legacy. In case you don't know, Leto acted as a tyrant and hoarded the spice to oppress humanity. However, this was a ruse in which humanity would become stronger, and eventually they'd take him down and then enter a golden age. In his death, the scattering happened, which basically involved humans just travelling back out into the universe. Now in secret, while all that was going on, a new AI empire rose up that then fought a war with the Gesserit. From this though, they engineered a peace, and finally humans could use Alexas again. In all the 15,000 years of their creation, humanity finally had made peace with the machines, and they could once more live together. So Erasmus is very important, and yeah, that's what I think they're setting up here. Another clue to who this might be came from a comment from Theodosia. Now in the episode, we learned she was saved by Valia from the Talaxu. They are known to have experimented on humans from the shadows. The Talaxu are capable of making Golas and resurrecting people from a single cell. So this might be how they rebuilt Desmond, and they then used him as a carrier of the virus. It would make sense that a robot AI like Erasmus is in league with a secretive collective like this, who could operate in secret. Very, very secret. Okay, so we begin with the Sisterhood out on Wallach 9. Chula is wrestling back and forth over learning about Desmond, and this episode fills in a lot of the past. Seeing the murder of Dorothea from a different view, we learn what happened with the Sisterhood. Along with Francesca and Kasia, they ended up carrying out a massacre. One thing we pointed out last week was that there was a lot less mothers in the future. This was an opposite to how things were at Raquel's funeral, and we now know why. Forcing them to choose, people hit the thumbs up before then slitting their throat. Burying their bodies in the pool, we have had hints of something dark down there for a while. The vision in episode 1 saw Kasia and Inez screaming for each other, and it's such a twisted reveal at the midpoint. Now it kind of shows the weird hypocrisy that exists in a lot of characters.
But they're using a thinking machine. They've put one inside him.
Desmond is operating as a machine, and throughout the episode, he's been executing people for using machines. Valia also wants to make the Order fall in line, which has gotten to the point she's willing to destroy the Order. Though she and Chula say Sisterhood above all early on, they also come into conflict with each other. The Sisterhood want you to put them above your family, and this is why they take children from their mothers. Even people who were related to each other in the group, they don't share kinship because of how they were raised. This is seen in Raquel, Dorothea, and Lassie Lila, who were all related but had no idea who anyone was. It's what makes Paul and, well, Desmond so dangerous, because their mothers do things that are best for them rather than the Sisterhood. Anyway, after the title, we cut to the Suk Dr. Gesserit and Chula. Studying the dreams and virus, they explain how Kasia survived prolonged exposure. This was due to Prana Bindu, which is a technique the Gesserit learn. It involves one gaining complete control of their body, down to their nerves, muscles, and cells. This is how the Gesserit can choose their child's gender, as they're able to alter things within themselves. It's also how they counteract and change the poison that's the water of life. They can break down and change the structure of the molecules so they can survive the process and change the poison into something nice that just makes him go on a trip. It's with this idea that she was able to stave off the virus though, and she could also control her fear. The virus lays dormant in the fear center, and it's when one's afraid that it starts to activate. And we learn that Kasia saw her family killed by the Butlerians, and she mastered her fear through doing this. The virus inactivates because someone becomes afraid, and it then causes the body to attack itself. So it's likely Kasia had the dream, she freaked out, and then everything just broke down. Now, because of this, I think it's where we get the phrase fear is the mind killer. In the book, it was because it made you act irrational or even become crippled with fear. Doing this left you open to death, and thus you had to be able to master it. However, if it comes from this virus that kills you when you're afraid, you can see how it would become part of their teachings. We don't get the saying coined in this episode, but I can see it being something they do down the line. Either way, we see that in even being able to master one's fear, that it can still overpower you. The Doctor's death is horrendous, with her skin burning up. We even have her doing the same hand exercises as Inez, but she's still not able to focus. Dying painfully, we then cut to Kieran's interrogation. Here we have the Protoss at a car, and also the suspense attack that both Duncan and the Baron used. Kieran gets beaten up and his eye goes red, which could potentially reflect his opposite in Desmond. He tells a story that his father told to him as a child, and in hindsight we know that this was Albert. Albert said there was a monster among them, and during a hunt it slaughtered all the family. This is obviously referring to Tula, and he made sure to never trust a Harkonnen. So to him, he'd never work with Michaela, knowing she was part of the Order. Due to her being under Valia, it's not something he would do unless he was completely desperate. He hates the Emperor as well, and obviously we're seeing the groundwork for the Atreides wanting to be separate from the two. The hatred of the Empire also reminded me of Leto being plotted against by the Emperor, which led to a secret deal with the Harkonnens. And while Kieran hates the Order and also the Harkonnens, he doesn't care, as he hates the Emperor more and is willing to do what it takes to get rid of him. In the end, this means he has to side with Valia, and this series is all about picking your sides. Some end up loyal to the Order, others choose to go with something else, and in the end, it's all about survival. Caught trying to free him, Inez is then arrested. Natalia refuses to spare his life, and she ends up putting her daughter in prison. Obviously, her mind state's been affected, and I love how we can see this in her dress. The Empress's clothes are now more like Desmond's uniform, and it highlights who she sided with. As for the Emperor, he sided with someone else, and we see as he's shacked up with Francesca. She tells us that Constantine's left for Arrakis, and I think this sets up things for season 2. We end with Kieran, Valia and Inez heading there, and I think this is where they'll meet Constantine. He's now in charge of the fleet and can help them start a rebellion. Obviously Natalia is not his mother, and if they say like, whoa, she killed your mother Francesca and your dad, it's gonna make the guy very angry. Who else is here is also Michaela, and thus there's lots of players on the planet. We also have the Rachases, who were betrayed earlier in the season. They were the ones who had the fleet, and I feel like they'll be coming back later on. Either way, back with the Sisterhood, we hear how Carino wants to divorce his wife. This would have allowed Francesca to take up the mantle, and it would have put a sister on the throne. This would then allow the Order to control the Duniverse, but Valia shuts down the idea. A divorce will cause war, and thus they have to go with the original plan. That was for them to use their sister in Inez, who would then take up the throne. So Valia wants to free her and move her out of the way, and basically keep her as a piece off the board. Inez being installed on the throne, it also reminded me of Princess Irulan in Dune Part 2. She's clearly smarter than her father and trained by the Sisterhood. He even said how formidable of an empress she would have been. However, men are the ones who lead, and it's similar to House of the Dragon, where making a female rule can cause issues. Back in the past, we see Valia showing the DNA index to her friends. Valia says this is quarantine, and thus the AI can't escape. However, as Tula says,
your mind can't be controlled forever, artificial or not.
Now, I personally believe that Erasmus will learn of this machine and then he'll come and get it. In the books, he became fascinated with the Kwisatz Haderach, and this system's basically built to create him. Looking at a young Mark Strong, they then decide to select, hey Francesca, stop staring at him, love. They decide to select Natalia, and know if the pair had a daughter, they'd be a powerful pawn. Kasha is instructed to be the voice by his side, and Francesca will keep him occupied. She's ordered to imprint, and Kasha will be the trusted advisor, and thus they'll have the Emperor in their palm. Did make me laugh a bit that the breeding program had been built up heavily as this grand massive plan, and here they use a dangerous thinking machine to tell them the great and fantastical idea to get control. Manipulate the future Emperor. Nice one there, mate. Great work. ChatGPT's got nothing on you. Tula protests as well, and Valia tells her son could shape the world, promising to guide them together. We'll see how that plays out. Desmond's really just a prototype Paulo that came from a Harkonnen and an Atreides. Jessica was a Gesserit as well, and thus when she had a son with Leto, it also created an incredible figure. However, though they share similarities, there is some differences between the two. Paul had his mother training him, while Desmond was sent off-world in secret. Constantine also did not reach his potential on a free path until his mother returned and he was made commander of the fleet. So you have these kind of repeating themes throughout the story. Now Chula could have stayed with him and left the order, but she's just too much like her sister. She funneled him away, she wanted him to have some actual free will. She's been put on her path due to her family being tarnished, and Valia's on her path believing the breeding program's sacred. All it led to is Desmond still being manipulated. Chula is even told by the AI to kill her son in order to stop the virus. She goes to him as a mother though, and it's a big turn in the series. We then get a bird's eye view of the pool in the courtyard. Again, this appears like an eye, and the computer floor in the last scene appeared like one as well. We then see his gens manipulated by Dorothea. I love how the beginning of the scene shot with her framed in a box, and this plays into the themes that she's trapped. However, she ends up escaping by jabbing Jen with a sedative. There was a point where it crossed my mind this might have been the Gom Jabbar, but it's ultimately just to knock her out. We then see as the Emperor goes to Desmond. The window in the room appears like an eye, and it's here the Emperor sees the truth. I love the symbolism here as well. Desmond is the one sat down, and he's the one ordering about the Emperor. Thrones are of course giant seats, and it's from sitting down that people lead. So subscribe! I order you to subscribe! The Emperor stood up, almost in an advisor position, and it highlights how the pair flip roles. As we see, he's just a man who's been controlled his entire life, and in the end he only has one choice. So choose. Again, him ending his own life with a blade, it kind of reflects what the sisters did against Valia, which is a great way to play things, and it all boils down to the choice of I'd rather be dead than mates with you. Cutting back to the acolytes are then given a further top-down view, which, say it with me, looks like an eye. Yes, eyes are of course laid throughout the finale, with this even being the key to the virus. Dorothea then enters, and stepping inside the sealed silence chamber, she asks why they've hidden away. Really shows the shift in the power balance and how the two sides have switched. The Gesserit painted themselves out as people following scripture who were dedicated to the Orange Catholic Bible. They read it openly while moving through the house, and it was Valia and co who practiced the voice in secret. Valia also told them of Raquel's plan like this, and they were the ones hidden away. Now though, it's the ones dedicated to the religion who are having to hide their conversations. They've of course been told that Lyle is dead, and this mirrors the story they were told of Dorothea. In this, she reveals where the Butlerian sisters are buried, and it's such a shocking moment. The temple is literally built on the bones of those who wouldn't obey, and Valia's got a lot of blood on her hands. Now with Jen, we see she focuses her body in order to slip through her bonds. Really great escape scene, and finally she's mastered her pain and mind. However, her warnings fall on deaf ears, and it really highlights the civil war. In the book, the battle between Valia and Dorothea was far more bloodier, and it split the temple right down the middle. So we have the potential for them to play that aspect of the book, which is something I'd really like to see. Saying that Valia's erased her files, we then get a repeat of the scene from episode 1. There Desmond approached House Carino, which is something we see Valia doing. This is then framed to us in a top-down view, which is also something they did with Desmond. Both moments had a figure with ulterior motives infiltrating House Carino, so it's a nice way to play on the opening entry. Theodosia's finally called upon as well, and we see a stone-shaped ship heading to the castle. When I broke down the first Dune film, I talked about Denny's design inspiration. When making Arrival, he looked at stones, and this is why the ship in that appears like a rock. These ideas were then carried over to Dune, with those inspiring the ships there. We even have a moment in Dune Part 2 where the ships are shown in the exact same way. So it's great that they brought this across to the show as well, as it helps just to continue this design choice. Theo ends up disguising as Inez, which isn't something I was suspecting. I don't think they use her full potential in the end, as I thought they might fake the character's death. This would then move Inez out of the way, but meh, I know she's escaped. Didn't even cross my mind they might even torture her, and she would just play up being Inez to basically distract them. Francesca's also given a cyanide lace needle though, which plays off the Gom Jabbar. In espionage though, cyanide capsules are used in case someone gets caught or a way to kill others. There's of course that famous spy story about Georgy Markov, who was assassinated with a poison-tipped umbrella. He was jabbed by a passerby, and weapons like this are often used when swords won't prevail. Natalia then reveals the truth about her allegiance with Desmond. Over Havako's shoulder, we can see an eye etching on the wall, and this is him seeing his wife for who she is. By reaching, told he's gonna be nothing more than a puppet, this idea is then enforced by Valia. Sitting on the throne, she gets further than the Baron ever would. Even in death, he still tried to climb up, and Valia got her wish of a sister sitting on it. Valia then goes off on him, and I love how even the gods hesitate when he says to arrest her. It shows how the Gesserit and religion are worshipped, with the church being seen as holy. It would be like if the Pope showed up and called you a dickhead and you rang the police. The police show up and they're like, I don't know mate, Pope said it, so maybe you are. I don't want to go to hell. Now I love how Havako is just described as a puppet that always needs someone holding the strings. She tells him his time's coming to an end, and they want Inez on the throne. Dorothea then plays out her death and she empties the pool, which gives us an almost worm mouth image. This water traveling outside, and the image of the worm is basically foreshadowing what happens to Arrakis. In them bringing water to the planet, it transforms Arrakis and then kills the worms. So they have to strike a balance, as with all things. Forcing people or weighing things too much in one way ends up with what we have in the show. It's wild seeing the sisters forced to choose, but it also highlights Valia as a dictator. Even though the majority of the Order won't side with her, she still says, my way or the highway. If it was a democracy, they'd have followed the Orange Catholic Bible, but most of the sisters die, as they'd rather go the other way. All that's left is Sister Avelia, who's been another solid character in the series. She's always kinda just went with who was in charge, and yeah, we never really know how she joined the main group until now. I love seeing her fleshed out here though, and I think she's going to be a really interesting character going forward. They're all wild cards. From here we then jump to Haviko, who tells Francesca it's time to move on to her next assignment. He's figured out he's got a target on his head, but Francesca chooses love over orders. Presenting the needle in the end, she'd rather leave the sisterhood than be without him. This choice of love is reflected in Inez, who gave it up to save Kieran. Say bye Valia. I love how much of a badass she is in this episode, and it shows how deadly the Order can be. I think by far this is the most gangsta I've ever seen any of the sisters act, and that scene later on, mwah. Typically, they just appear like an old woman or an old crane as they're described in the book, and you don't expect them to be capable assassins, but just seeing her walking along, ordering people with the voice, it highlights how powerful they are. Reminded me a bit of the Vader scene in Rogue One, as she's pretty unstoppable. Again, most badass Bene Gesserit scene I've ever seen or read in any of the books, and it all comes out from this moment. The plan then comes into play and Theo buys them some time. Changing to a dying guard to bring Desmond in close, it's a similar tactic to what Leto used on the Baron. Given a poisonous capsule by Dr. Yue, he drew the Baron in close. Leaning in, he then set this off, but the Baron then escaped. Desmond leans in closer here too, and he also survives the attack. Honestly, when I'm writing these breakdowns, sometimes I get kind of confused about exactly what the plan was. Theo looks at the corpse on the floor, and in the end, this is who she switches places with. I don't know why this was done, but she valiantly says sisterhood above all. It doesn't kill Desmond though, and yeah, not a great plan. So I do wonder if she was ordered to be Inez, but instead she just changed her mind at the last minute. Francesca disobeyed Valia's order as well, and potentially, you know, Theo was doing the same thing. Let me know below what you think, but I think she just wanted to try and get a hit in. Should have used a poison needle, love. Might have even been some loyalty to Chula, and yeah, sometimes the explainer needs some explaining. Comment section below, that's what the comments are made for. Now Valia didn't intend to save Kieran, but her hand's forced by Inez. It plays off Kieran's words earlier when he told Desmond about what Chula did to the family. It's somewhat poetic that someone with such sheer hatred of the Atreides is then left to have to save one, and he'll now work to install Inez on the throne. I do wonder if Canley's going to come through in the end though, and they'll be like, look mate, rules of Canley say we've got to kill you and all your family. That's kind of what got them to this point, as you know, Griffin's death, it had lasting repercussions. In Sisterhood of Dune we read about him trying to kill Vorian Atreides, but he also had doubts about it. In the book, Valia was more militant about the blood feud, and in some way she led to her brother's death, although he seems to be slightly different in the show. Either way, Haviko pulls a knife out, and though Francesca says they can run away, he questions whether it's just another part of the manipulation. Guy's entire life's being controlled, and in the end, he just can't trust anyone. Doesn't matter if it's the sisters, his wife, Desmond, or his daughter, everyone's turned against him. Now in his death, I do wonder if this is setting up Secundus as the prison planet. Later on it would become a harsh wasteland where the Sardaukar are trained. Mirroring Arrakis, only the strong survive, and it creates the best of the best of the best, sir. Natalia then kills Francesca, and she does so by jabbing her in the neck. The needle in the Gom Jabbar test is held up here, and the lovers die in each other's arms. Very Romeo and Juliet again, with Natalia rejecting Haviko in his dying breaths. Now what this also does is make it look like Francesca murdered the Emperor, so the sisterhood will be hunted. We see Dorothea stand up in front of her sisters, and she mentions they'll continue on the righteous path. This mirrors the scene from Dune Part 2 where Paul stands in front of all the Fremen and says how he will lead them to paradise. I did like this, as Paul was born outside of the breeding program, or against its will, and Dorothea also is against this path that Valia wants the sisterhood to go down. Now personally, I think these sisters, you know, with the Emperor's death, they're the ones who are going to take the fall. They're easy enough to pin the blame on, and as we know, well, Valia Valia's way wins out in the end. You can always guess where a prequel's gonna go. Thanks guys, 10,000 years of spoilers. Dorothea then smashes open the indexing chamber door before destroying the machine. I don't know if that'll turn off the computer though, and it's like back in the day when my mum used to think, right, she used to think turning the TV off turned off my PlayStation, but as soon as you leave the room, yeah, it's gone back on and I'm playing through the rest of the level. This has made the new group the Spice Girls though, and they should really check out our merch store right below the video. Do you like calling yourself the Spice Girls? Yeah, well, we've got a t-shirt inspired by the show and lots more for you guys to pick up. We've also got our 007 inspired shirt, our Alien Chestburster one, and also one saying, if you're gonna spoil the movie, then Warner Brother, hey? It all helps videos like this get made, and huge thank you to everyone who's picked one up. Either way, Chula has left and we see she remembers her past. Holding Desmond in her arms, wrapped in a black blanket, it's a similar thing to what they had with baby Jessica. However, Chula says he deserves to choose his own path. Being a Harkonnen means she's locked in a blood feud with the Atreides. Again, by the laws of Canley, they have to carry out until one side is dead. Chula even had to kill the love of her life to keep this up. Chula knows Valia will use her child in a similar way, and thus he's sent away. There's lots of clear Moses parallels here, and both caused an uprising. Both had a mission to free others from servitude, and it plays well into the themes of religion. Swap for a stillborn, this is why Valia never connected the dots with Desmond. I think Chula knew deep down her sister would never let her really have a son, and in the end he'd always be a tool. Again, the book fleshes out that she caused Desmond's death by inspiring him to go and carry out the blood feud. Chula was poisoned against the family as well, and in the end, you know, they'd probably do the same thing with Desmond. So in the end she chooses him, and it's some real growth for the character. Left with the stillborn child, she comforts this too, and I think deep down she always wanted to be a mother. The Gesserit all call themselves mothers as well, so it builds nicely off of that. We then see as Harrow takes his surveillance device back. I love how this reforms and all comes together, and it's such a great way to depict it. Watching the plan, this also exposes what Valia was up to. It's going to provide more evidence for Natalia, and Harrow will likely seize power through this, if he decides to even give it over. As we know, the Harkonnens end up as the most powerful house in the Duniverse, and it likely all spans out from this moment. Anyway, we see as Kieran and Co land at the fuel depot, with the ports of course looking like an eye. Here Valia shows her true strength, but Desmond activates the virus. This has the beating of a thumper, and it plays out at night. Valia says,
You say you've seen my end. Show me.
I do think the reason the fear happens is because she's literally seeing her death. This thumper's on Arrakis at night, so it's different to the visions Desmond had in the day. Feel like this is foreshadowing her fate, and that she'll die on Arrakis after a worm summoned. This would also play into the visions of a worm swallowing the temple, as she's the figurehead of the order. She also sees the worm coming in this moment, but she accepts that it has to. Witnessing Desmond's vision herself, I think this highlights her end too. Either way, she revisits the drowning of Griffin, which we heard about earlier in the season. Slipping through some ice, she used the voice to keep him swimming. Just in how she guided him using her voice, we see as Chula does the same thing. Much in the same way she brought her back from the Rossack poisoning, she also does that here. You might also notice that as she walks to where Valia is, we can hear voices. These come from genetic memory, and it's her ancestors saying what to do. In the end though, she makes her own choice. Using the voice on Valia, she saves her son. Finally, Chula's broken free, and though the pair were two wolves born to feed with not a care for the cost, they can help in some ways. Now Valia says whoever's behind this is a hidden hand grasping for control. They too have their eyes on Desmond and know what potential he has. The idea of a hidden hand is something that's been laced throughout the season, with that also being the name of episode 1.
There is another hidden hand grasping for control.
I always interpreted that as the Bene, but you know, you can apply it to all these different factions. So I think going forward, we'll learn more about that, and if it's Erasmus, then there's lots of things that can happen. Valia says this figure's working from the shadows, and thus she must fight them from the shadows too. Chula wants to remain in the light, and she stays behind with her son. She's arrested, but I think she'll win him back, but at the moment, we've got him and the Empress. The other side is Valia and the gang, and we then have Dorothea as well. Lastly is the machine figure, and the pieces are all falling into place. At the moment though, Valia must retreat to Arrakis, which is where she'll probably see Michaela and Constantine. Travelling in a Highliner, I love how you can see space fold around it. It's like the black hole effect from Interstellar, which was proven to be scientifically accurate. Guild navigators can fold space and then travel great distances. So this is what we're seeing, and this is one of the most beautiful shots in the series. It's then coupled with another one flying over the dunes, which look just like an ocean. We then travel to what I believe is Arrakeen, as it looks to be located in the mounting a shield wall. That's what protects the city from the worms, and we see as the three step onto the planet. It's going to be a difficult, harsh environment, but from here they can find a way to fight back. So that wraps up the season, and as for my thoughts of it, I think if you follow the breakdowns, you'll have a fair idea. It's something that I felt dropped the ball early on, but at the midpoint, I think it really found its footing. Every week's improved on the last, and it's created a great part of the universe. Obviously, it's getting a lot of comparisons to Game of Thrones, and I think they are just. You put this first season side by side with that one, and there's definitely some similarities tonally. It's one of those ones where you get attached to all sides, and I really don't know who I want to win. There's big deaths, backstabbing, great characters growing out, and some really solid performances. I think that finale was just gut punch after gut punch, and though I was harsh on the series in the beginning, I'm glad I was proven wrong, because that check from HBO paid for Christmas. So as a Dune fan, I really enjoyed it in the end. However, I do think that there is probably elements that hold it back from being newcomer friendly. I think if you haven't at least read about 3 of the Dune books or sat through YouTuber explainers like this, then you might get a bit lost. I really do wish they'd done a show on the Butlerian Jihad first, as I think that would have been a really good starting point. It's not too lore heavy at that point, and then you can show the creation of the Sisterhood and then the need for the spice. It also allows for more action, which I think has been a bit lacking in the series. I know it's not that kind of show, but yeah, even the moment where Valia's just using the voice to mess people up, it really helps that dynamics. It's mainly the lore thing that I think people will get lost on, and at points even I was like, don't know what they're going on about, time to crack open the books. However, I think if you're aware of that stuff and can dive right in, then you're gonna have a good time with this. Though I don't think we'll get that God Emperor in a movie, I do think they could do a show just like this. So if they set up the elements of it here and build out from that, we could have 2 big things for fans. You could have the films that tell Paul's story, and then the shows that help to tell Leto's. I know obviously it wasn't Leto yet, but breadcrumbs can be laid, and this show's a perfect example of how they can just explore the expanded universe. That's what I'd love to see, and yeah, overall I have enjoyed the series. Just wish it was longer and a bit quicker off the blocks, but as a fan, I've really enjoyed breaking it down, and I hope you guys have had fun watching me as well. So yeah, it's a thumbs up from me. If you're a Dune fan and you just don't, go and watch this? Yeah, do go watch it. It is good and it's worth your time. Obviously, there's brilliant channels out there though, like the God Emperor Quinn's Ideas, Alt Shift X, and Emergency Awesome, and huge shout outs to everyone for making this a fun series to discuss. Make sure you drop your thoughts on the series below, and also hit the thumbs up on your way out. Did you know members of the channel also get early access to videos like this every week, and it goes a massive way towards helping us out. For just 99 cents a month, you'll get early access to at least 1 video a week, and yeah, all goes towards helping videos like this get made, and less than $12 a year. What a bloody bargain. Now if you want something else to watch, we've got a breakdown on screen right now. That is our Return of the King 2 hours and 12 minutes breakdown, which yeah, lots of stuff to talk about, very in-depth, very long, but hopefully worth your time. With that out of the way though, huge thank you for going through this series with me. Hope to see you on the next one. I've been Paul, you've been the best. I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.